It's New Year's Eve in a snowy cold town, somewhat prospering from being around, midway between two bigger towns. The blacksmith will early close, the general store is always open to those who need something when the sign says closed. The barber all day will be open, where all the news will surely be spoken. The jail's closed even when it's open. The Old West starts to fade away. Echoes can be heard in the air today, cold and crisp on this year's final day. It was the last day of the year. Sheriff Elroy Birch got up early, as he always did, to patrol the main street before it woke up. The street was filled with snow, slush, and ice from the storm 2 days ago. The weather stayed cold. The sheriff put on his heavy boots and coat and went out just as dawn broke. He walked heavily on his legs even when the weather was good, making him look tough, weary, and overweight at the same time. The town was still quiet, with a few signs of folks getting ready for the day. He completed his patrol like he always did, nodding and saying good morning to those stirring about, and then went back to his office to make coffee. He later went to the station to meet the first train since the storm. When the train finally came, he could see it spewing snow and slush to either side, like a mighty fountain, straight toward him. He hadn't run so fast in years to avoid the onslaught. When the engineer came into the station, the sheriff eyed him for a while, but didn't make any effort to be noticed by the normally dependable engineer. There would be a New Year's dance that evening in the converted barn. The sheriff would be there, more or less still on duty. There were some whispers that he should marry the recently widowed Rebecca, but he stayed clear of them and stuck to his job. While at the dance, he was surprised by folks openly talking about what they once were only whispering about. He told those who confronted him that he's an old sheriff set in his ways. When he added that his job is dangerous, folks replied that those days were over. Suddenly, there were a couple of shots fired outside the dance hall in the street. The sheriff reacted quickly and was told 3 young cowboys had broken into the bank and all had guns. He told folks to stay in the dance hall and went into the street. The cowboys must have scattered because he saw one by himself struggling in the snow. The cowboy saw the sheriff and aimed his gun, but the sheriff could still shoot where he was aiming and shot the cowboy in the shoulder just enough for him to drop his gun and grab his arm. The sheriff signaled him to a horse post and made it known that he should not move. Then he went after the 2 other cowboys. The sheriff had a natural instinct for locating those he pursued, and he found a second cowboy in a back alley, also struggling with the snow and ice on a fence. He told the cowboy to drop his gun, but didn't see the 3rd cowboy come behind him, setting up to shoot. But as the 3rd cowboy fired his gun, Rebecca came behind him and whacked him with a heavy broom. The cowboy's bullet flew a few feet to the sheriff's right. The sheriff seemed to take the flying bullet in stride, but his legs started to feel wobbly, and he tried not to think about it. The sheriff took the 3 cowboys to jail and sent a helper to wake the doctor for the one who was whacked. Rebecca stayed in the sheriff's office while all the commotion was going on. The sheriff gave his best effort to keep everything under control. When things started settling down, he turned to Rebecca and said, "You're a good dancer. I wouldn't mind trying to dance with you some more. If I should come courting, I hope you receive me well." She replied with a smile, "I'll have my broom handy." It's New Year's Eve in a snowy cold town, somewhat prospering from being around, midway between 2 bigger towns. The blacksmith will early close. The general store is always open to those who need something when the sign says closed. The barber all day will be open, where all the news will surely be spoken. The jail's closed even when it's open. The Old West starts to fade away. Echoes can be heard in the air today, cold and crisp on this year's final day.